Welcome everybody to this Friday live stream here on the Townsend's channel, and well, we're having a lot of fun. We always do these Friday live streams, and sometimes you never know what you're gonna get with the live stream. It's always exciting, and you just never know what's gonna happen. So I'm John Townsend, and behind me, behind your camera, there's Aaron on the console. There's Aaron.
Hey, everyone.
There's Kyle. He's in the question seat, and normally Ryan sits right there and kind of keeps me focused and running, and he's not here. There's an empty spot there. Ryan is out on the road with his musical act for the next couple of days. Do you know where he's playing? He was up in Ypsilanti, right?
He's doing kind of a Midwest run. I don't know all the dates, but I know he was playing Kentucky somewhere, I believe. Yeah. Probably going up to Kalamazoo as well.
Yeah, so Ryan's out on the road. I just talked to him on the phone just a few minutes ago, but he's not here. So let's see. I really want to we have had a great week, and last Friday's live stream was just incredible with people supporting us through Super Chat. That's available if you'd like to help support this channel and what we do, the cooking episodes and historical sites and all that kind of good stuff. We also have a PayPal link down in the description section, and Patreon is another great way of supporting us. A lot of folks like to support us that way, which is just like a small amount every month. That's also a great way to support us, as well as the merch store on our website. We sell 18th and 19th century stuff like hats and shirts and waistcoats and cooking things, and then we also have a few things that are merch like. We don't have any right now, but we'll soon have some more of these cool throwback mugs, as well as some other pieces. So that is available, and it is a lot of fun, very encouraging when we get that kind of support.
Do we want to do the Instagram thing real quick?
Instagram, yes. Every Friday we have our sort of Instagram contest. If you are active on Instagram and you want to engage with this, we look for a Instagram picture once every week, tagged with the Townsend's tag or
hashtag Townsend.
Yeah, hashtag Townsend.
Yep.
And
here is this week's winner. Here it comes.
There it is.
There it is. Jay Rustin. You won. Thank you.
Okay. Did I get to see it?
Yeah, I showed you. It's a guy shooting the
musket.
Yeah.
Shoot, boy.
Black and white.
Anyway, we will contact him. We'll DM him about getting a gift certificate out to him. And so if you're interested in that, a historical picture, an unboxing picture, something to do with Townsend's merch, whatever, something like that, tag it with hashtag Townsend's, and hopefully we'll pick you. So thank you so much for all the folks that have been participating in that way. It's always great to see that stuff. So Thursday's video, I was talking about travel, and I was reading from this very giant tome, DeWarville's, what is it? It's called New Travels in the United States, 1788. Such a great book, and I only got through just a tiny bit of it, and boy, it's just more and more stuff comes up. So I thought I just have to bring a little bit more of this to you, because this thing is chock full of different kinds of information. Now, if you've heard of people writing things, or looking at things with rose-colored glasses, well, DeWarville here, when he's talking about the United States, I think he's got two pair on at once. It's that bad. He really is talking up the United States and talking down every place else. But it's still really interesting reading. I mean, if you read this, you would think that, there were no criminals in the United States. We don't have any need for doctors, et cetera, because it's just so wonderful here. But it's still really interesting pieces. Let's see. Mostly, a lot of this is travel specific. There's a section where he's talking about traveling on the roads, and I mentioned earlier in yesterday's video about not being concerned too much with protecting yourself for security, leaving your guns behind when you're traveling. Here he talks about women traveling, or specifically girls traveling in Connecticut. He says, on the road, you often meet with those fair Connecticut girls, either driving a carriage or alone on horseback, galloping boldly, with an elegant hat on their head, a white apron, and a calico gown. Usages which prove at once the early cultivation of their reason, the safety of the road, and the general innocence of their manners. And then he goes on about how they didn't need to be worried about being protected, and he says something like, they are under the protection of public morals. In other words, it's not so dangerous there that they need to worry about that. There was also this section, he's traveling by stages. And actually, we had a question 1 or 2 back. Somebody was asking about how people traveled in the United States, and my answer was that they walked a lot. But I mean, this isn't the case here. He's not walking, at least in these kinds of situations with this level of society. These stages, especially in this part of civilized world, there are a lot of them. And here he says, you find in these stages men of all professions. They succeed each other with rapidity. One who goes about 20 miles yields his place to another who goes farther. And then it says, mother and daughter mount the stage to go 10 miles to dine, and another stage brings them back. So they're using them like taxi cabs. And then he goes on to talk about how there's all these different kinds of people that meet up in stages, people of high class and of low class. So it was apparently used by a lot of different levels of society. So I thought that was truly interesting. Another interesting piece here. Sometimes we talk about tobacco and pipe smoking, and occasionally the topic of cigars comes up, and this is sort of off topic, but I'm going to mention it anyway. He actually talks about here in New York, they smoke cigars, which come from the Spanish islands. The leaves of the tobacco rolled in the form of a tube 6 inches long and are smoked without the aid of any instrument. Pipes. This usage is revolting to the French. It may appear disagreeable to the women by destroying the purity of the breath. The philosopher condemns it as it is a superfluous want. But then he goes on to say that cigars render a man the service that of a philosopher, or the service that a philosopher drew from a glass of water. Because he's smoking a cigar, he takes a long time to answer a question, I guess, is where he's going with that. Was there one more piece? I think there was one more interesting piece. Oh yeah.
Yes,
go ahead,
Aaron.
Do
some donations.
Go ahead.
Then you can read that last piece. So I got a few. I'll read through them. So these should be fairly quick. $2 from Ben Backus. He says,
"Thank you.
Love it. Keep it up. Thank you." Captain Shadow 81, $5. No question, just a recent subscriber and patron who's been enjoying going through the Townsend's video backlog. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Icy Fur, $2, but it has an A in front of it. I'm not sure if that's, what do we say that was?
Australian?
Maybe Australian. I'm not sure, but thank you. $1.99 from Hawkeye Pierce. Love the channel and everything you do. Thank you. George Plays gave us €5, I believe. Yeah, that's a euro sign. Thank you so much. And then the Icy Fur did the $5 Australian, I think, and had a question about a specific thing, but we'll just say thanks for the money.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for supporting us that way. I did mention just very briefly on Thursday's episode that he talked about packet boats, and packet boats are like small bus or let's say taxi boats that go around the coast. And here he says that taking a packet boat from it is not rare in summer to run from Newport to New York at 200 miles in 20 hours. Fast run. Let's see. And then he says the price of the passage and your tables from Providence to New York is $6. Okay, so I think it's passage and food. And And then he describes one of these packets. He says, the one which I was in contained 14 beds, ranged in 2 rows, one above the other. Everyone had its little window, which is very interesting. The chamber was well aired so that you did not breathe the noxious air which infects the packets of the English Channel. I mean, this sounds like a really interesting method of transport. We don't really think about that too much today, but taking a little packet boat, so 14, beds. I don't know how many people are going to fit on that boat. Some people might not have that kind of accommodation, but I don't imagine there's more than 25 or 30 people on board. So a very small kind of boat that you're taking. And he mentions that they are quite frequent down the coast. So there are lots of different places that you could get one and go on to the next spot for a little bit further travel. So many different kind of varied ways of traveling here. And this is 1788, after the Revolution, before it gets kind of too built up. He stays along the eastern seaboard, so he is really staying in sort of civilized territory, but still a really, really interesting glimpse into what this looked like. Especially, I mean, we usually get these kind of glimpses from folks that are from someplace else, right? You don't generally describe where you live in great detail, but when you go visit someplace, you describe it in great detail, and that's what he's doing here. Now, the story about de Warville, that's actually a pen name. What's his name? Brissot, a Frenchman, is really a sad story because he goes back to France after traveling in the United States, and he is gathering up information and money so he can bring his family back to the United States, and he gets caught up in the French Revolution and gets guillotined. So that's not a good story, but a really fascinating book. If you're interested in the print version, you can go down into the description section. That's down there, right, Aaron? In the description section?
Yeah, both those books are down there.
Okay.
New Travels in the United States, 1788, and then the Early American Criminals. And
Right.
that second one's an Amazon link.
Right. So actually, I'll get to that right now because I had a few questions. There was one that was specific here, and it's really funny because if you read into Warville, he writes about how there, is hardly any crime, etc. And then I've got another question here that somebody wrote that was on that topic. Where is it? Oh yeah, here we go. This is just David, and he says, you mentioned how it seemed unnecessary to lock your doors and carry firearms to protect yourself from robbery. I would like to hear more about crime and law enforcement in the New World compared to Europe. Thanks. So I don't have a bunch of that just, off the top of my head. The topic of crime and punishment within the 18th century is so much different than it is today. It is really a great topic to dig into, especially how they punished people, how they captured criminals. England has this really interesting history about how that worked in the 18th century and the sort of private what was it called? Thief takers, yeah, and that kind of thing. Where we expect here in North America that you have police and somebody breaks the law and the police come out and get you, etc. It just wasn't like that at all. And early America has got some real interesting history in it too. So I've got this book in the library. Anthony Vaver writes this book about early American criminals. If you're interested in criminal things, it's a great book to check out. I'll probably bring you some of this kind of information in the future, but for now, if you're interested and you want to take a look at the book, there's a link, Amazon link down in the description section of... Yes, go ahead.
So let's do a couple questions, and then there's a lot of donations. I'll read through those. So go ahead, Kyle, give us a question.
What you got, Kyle?
Okay, so do you dress historically every day for work or just for the camera shots?
Mostly just for the camera shots, but occasionally you'll find me wearing weird clothes. But I wear weird clothes all the time, so there you go. I don't know. What do you guys think? What's the answer for that?
No. You're in normal clothes.
Yeah. Well, normal to John clothes.
Yeah.
Music of the 18th century has a very specific twang to it. How did the music evolve, and what was it inspired by?
Well, there's a lot of different kinds of music. I mean, what we have on the channel is kind of folk and dance music that you hear, but there are other kinds of music that show up in that, and a lot of that evolution of music is I mean, in the kind that you're hearing here is specifically for dance. It's specifically a common kind of music, not a a more academic kind of music that you would hear, classical music per se. So there are different families of music going on in the 18th century, and so I don't know how to answer it besides that. I mean, it has that sort of dance music evolution to it.
I mean, that's a massive question.
Yeah, it is.
How did they shave so sharp in 1788?
I have not shaved with straight razors yet, just totally straight bladed razors, and I really don't know how they survived doing that day after day. And shaving was the common mode for people within the cultures that we usually talk about. The English, North Americans, shaving was a normal thing. You just hardly ever saw beards. I mean, you might see them a little bit more in North America. They were definitely a cultural thing in other parts of the world or other particular subcultures, but the general English and North Americans always shaved, and I don't know how they did it, except that they did it. Now, if you think about straight razors and how kind of dangerous they seem, and they evolve into something like safety razors and then crazy disposable razors we have today, in the 18th century they did have a sort of a tool that was in one of the cutlery books that covers up the blade of a straight razor that makes it into a kind of a safety razor. Really interesting thing. So you can start to see the evolution into other kinds of shaving right there in the late 18th century.
John, I think they also took their time.
Yeah, they probably weren't.
With shaving these days, it's 7 blades and get it done quick.
Yeah, except you don't have that problem. So
I don't know.
I want to do some of these donations real quick. Is my mic on? Can everybody hear me? Sounds quiet for some reason, but we're gonna do these anyway. So I gotta remember where I was because there's been like 10 since the last one. Okay. $5 from Amen to Pain. Oh no. Well, thank you for your $5. €10 from. See these names, I can't read them. 10. Oh yeah, it's €10 from ARZKAFUL1. Thank you so much. $2 from Giub says thanks for the packet boat info. Very interesting. Thank you. Thank you for the donation. $5 from Michael Riley says hat, shirt, stockings, buckles, and shoes from Townsend's. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm going to do some of these quick ones real quick, and then a couple have questions.
Okay.
We can do those. So, Rebecca 48215, and I'm pretty sure she's donated before. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca.
€27.99. Sending love from Europe. Thank you so much. Okay, so these next two have questions. We'll do these real quick.
Great.
$2 from Chad. Anything about Fort Recovery, Ohio, and Wabash? And then $10 from Max are Cruel. Man, it's so embarrassing to try to read these. What is the use and origin of the tricorn hat? When did they start and then fall out of favor? So we'll do the one about the Fort, Ohio, and Wabash first.
Fort Recovery in Ohio, not very far away. I don't have anything I can specifically give you about Fort Recovery off the top of my head. I mean, obviously it's a close by thing and has some real interesting information. And the Wabash River, if we're talking about that, as the other part of your question, just shows up over and over and over again in these books. It's really an important trading area. I mean, it's a long stretch of a river, so there's a lot of things going on with it, from Fort Wayne and Lafayette, and as it goes back further into Ohio. So it's a really important tributary, and whenever you run into these books that mention the backcountry in the early 18th century, quite often it shows up in one form or the other. So it is one of those important tributaries, has a lot of sort of trading going on with it. And I think it goes a long distance and is very navigable, so that's one of the reasons why it shows up. So it's one of those great rivers that not very far away from here at all, and just shows up in these historical things over and over and over again.
And the other one was...
Oh, Tricorn hats.
Yeah, Tricorn hats, yep.
Yeah, so, I mean, if you kind of piece through the history of hats, and hats have this great, funny, fashion evolution if you go back through time or forward through time, depending on how you look at it. And in that 17th century time period, you had these great big giant floppy brimmed hats, and those hats are strange to work with looks. I had to take a lot of pictures, product pictures, catalog pictures, and whenever somebody's wearing a hat like that, it's really hard to take a good picture of them because they're all shaded and you can't see what's going on, and their faces in the dark, and I think that's one of the reasons why tricorn hats come in this late 17th century, early 18th century, and they take over from these wide brim hats that are just flat, is that hair starts to become a very important thing, and fashion's an important thing. And these hats, they block your view of all these things going on, and so they flopped the sides up so that you could see what was going on. Now, of course, it renders the hat basically useless, but they did it anyway. So I think that's where some of that evolution's coming on, but most of that's just my guessing. There may be some other folks that have a little better idea, or you might find more different kinds of opinions as you go looking through fashion things about why tricorn hats come in. And many times these fashions are driven by a single person doing one of these things. So that may be traced back to a single person who said, "Oh, I'm going to change my hat this way," and everyone else followed suit. That happens today so much, and it happened in the 18th century at the same time, the same way. Sometimes the hats were made with hooks and eyes so that you could transform your hat to a flat hat from a tricorn hat. But most of the time, if it's fashion, it's fastened, and it can't change its mode of operation. Whew, that's a lot on hats.
Yeah, do we want to do some more questions?
You got another question for me, Kyle?
Oh, yeah. Are there any books on First Nation recipes that old settlers had written down?
Not as a recipe. And in fact, people just plain didn't do as much of that kind of thing as they do today. So I don't have a good answer for you. Most of the time, they would just describe those things. They wouldn't go to the point of giving you a whole receipt or a whole series of instructions and amounts. So, I don't have anything beyond that. There are lots of references to particular things, and sometimes rudimentary, in-depth descriptions, but not, take 1 quart of this and some of that. You don't get that kind of thing.
Did vegans or vegetarians exist in the 18th century, or were people just concerned about eating regularly?
Well, this topic comes up quite often. I think we talked about it a little bit in the last live stream, and vegetarianism shows up in the 18th century. You can really kind of divide this up into a couple of different categories, or a couple of different reasons why people would eat that way. And one of the most common reasons people would eat that way in the 18th century was just to be either for health reasons, because they thought that animal flesh wasn't particularly healthy, or they were eating that way for economic reasons, because meat was very expensive. And then there's that third category, which I think more people today might fall into that, and that's sort of the ethical reasons why you would not want to eat meat. So I don't think there are too many people in the 18th century that are eating vegetarianism or eating with that kind of diet for the ethical reasons. Most of them are eating that way for economic reasons, and some people are eating that way for the health reasons specifically. So it's kind of, I would say most people, if they eat that way, it was just because they were poor.
I'm gonna do some more donations real quick, just because there's a lot. We're
Thank you. Go ahead.
super thankful for that. Okay, now I'm assuming that the A in front of the dollar sign is Australian,
We're
because
gonna guess that.
nobody corrected me. 1.5 acre suburban homestead, $1. Thank you. They also later donated 10 Australian dollars, saying thank you. I received my pocket spice or
Excellent.
pocket knife, spice box, and DVD on Thursday. Thank you for the
Great.
great calendar.
Great.
Cheers from Joshua in Australia. Yep, we were right.
There you go.
P.S. Keep up the great videos. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so then I gotta go back. Hardy hat, $5. Can you do any videos focusing on Indiana? I know it's possible, or I know it's probably a bit outside your normal time range, but it would be neat to show some Hoosier pride.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks for the donation. The
Yes, thank
eel one, kind of.
Yeah, we talked about Indiana and Eel River. So if you go back and check out the Corn and Eels episode, we talked a bit about that.
Yeah, and just a couple more. So okay. Some of these might be a little complex with the questions.
Okay.
Well, this one's from Thomas, just $1. Thanks for the donation.
Thank you, Thomas.
Appalachian Viking, $5. Thank you. Can you comment at all on condensed milk? It's more 19th century, but I find it interesting. And then Pud 219, $2. Were there any common sports in colonial America? So we try the condensed milk one real quick, and then we'll do the
Wow,
sports.
you got me on condensed milk. I've got nothing for you on that, specifically 18th century. Doesn't ring any bells, so I don't have any good answers for you on that one. And sports, collar and elbow. Kyle really wants me to do a collar and elbow demonstration. I don't think I'm ready for that, especially if I've got to fight him. Anyway, was there another question there? No.
No, it was just the sports and the
Right.
condensed milk.
Right. There are some sports things that are going on. I don't think they're nearly as organized as we might think of sports, or even as organized as they were in the early 20th century or the 19th century. But you certainly have some sports things going on. I think there were a lot more sort of ad hoc and foot races, etc. I think most of the time they were more interested in horse races and those kinds of things. So I think there's something about there's definitely the Native Americans were playing sort of sports and ball games, and you'll see references to that. There's even a time, I think it was French and Indian War, when they used a ball game as a ruse to invade a fort. And so the people in the fort were, the doors were open. The Native Americans were playing their sports just outside the gates, and a couple times they hit the ball into the fort by accident, and then the third time they all rushed in and took over the fort. So there is some reference to that kind of thing going on. So that's the only thing that sort of pops into my head as that question comes forward. You have anything else for me, Aaron? Okay.
Yes, I do. Okay. The longest recipe ever made on the show.
Do they mean like how long it took?
Yeah, the longest one it took.
Oh gosh.
What do you
think, Aaron?
The 12th night cake, I remember being really, really complicated.
Yeah, the 12th night cake, and if you see the episode of The Tale of Two Cakes, that it makes something very, very similar. But great cakes in the 18th century were this convoluted fruit cake giant thing that you baked, and it took lots of work and lots of different components to it, and you had to whip the egg yolks for half a year to get it fluffy, and even then it turns out dense. But the 12th night cakes, that's probably the most complicated ones.
The other one that popped into my mind was the soup, stew, and hash, because we had 3 different ones going on.
Right.
We've done 3 videos, shot 3 videos at a time. This was 3 in one video.
Yeah. And that was first season. That was like the 3rd or 4th of the cooking videos we did.
Yeah, super early on.
Before we learned that you needed cut them up into smaller ones.
Let's see, how many people or how many Americans actually owned guns, and were they expensive?
I would say the vast majority of people had guns of one sort or another. During the 18th century, a lot of people were living not in the country, but at least on the edge of towns. So it wasn't uncommon at all to have muskets and pistols and that kind of thing. I think people hunted obviously more often, and so maybe in the big cities. They weren't big, but maybe in the cities there wasn't quite as much of that, but very, very, very common. What was the second part of that? Oh, how expensive were they?
Yeah.
Well, if you reference something like the live stream or the episode I did not this Thursday, but last Thursday, where I talked about the goods that were available at the trading post at Fort Wayne, the rifles that they had for trade were $12.50 in dollars at that point, because they were like 12.5 silver dollars, whereas a pair of shoes was something like $4. I don't know if that's a good reference for you, but they were expensive, but I don't think they were maybe terribly expensive. I don't know. I'd have to work at figuring out what the ratio is. It's very difficult. Money was a question that came up over and over again. People were asking specifically about money and kind of understanding how much it's worth. And we can look at those things a couple of different ways, and they give you different answers. If you look at how much money is and you say, how many dollars does an average laborer make, in a week, or do we look at the cost of items and judge them against each other? Or do we look at, say, like, in the case of 12 silver dollars, we can say, what's 12 ounces of silver worth today? There's a lot of different ways to try to figure out what things were worth. And they don't always come up with the same answer.
See, what are your thoughts on James Fenimore Cooper's works, both fiction and historical?
Well, he was very wordy, but so were most people who wrote things in the 19th century. I think they're a fun read, and they are a product of their time. And I don't know how to answer it beyond that. I think that some of that is interesting historical. On the other hand, I wouldn't lean on it for any real information. I would use that, if I was using that in a historical basis, to lead me in directions to find the real information. It's like, is this really true? And go back and try to find examples of a particular occurrence that happened in that. Or even, is this kind of situation realistic? There was so much romanticism that was going on in the 19th century that pervades the literature. And so you really can't use it a lot to judge what was happening 100 years ago until you go back and look at those kinds of documents.
This question kind of bounces off of that question, since, Last of the Mohicans was a movie. Do you find it difficult to enjoy movies and shows that take place in the 18th century because of the inaccuracies you notice?
I generally, sometimes I'm drawn out of a movie, and so I'm paying attention to that kind of stuff. Generally, if the story's good, I'm paying attention to the story, and I can leave behind. I can just pretend it's Star Wars or something. It doesn't have to actually live in history. We can kind of take it as, fantasy that, look, they're wearing tricorn hats, and that's okay by me, and it doesn't bother me that much to watch things. But it can be fun to pick them apart historically. But that's a whole different way of watching a movie. That's, there you go.
We'll do some donations real quick. They keep coming. Okay, so I did the 1.5 acre Subaru. I did them.
Yes.
Okay. So $10 from M. Stewart Jones.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I've seen your comments quite often. Yeah.
Yep. £5 from British Gamer.
Okay.
Love your videos.
Thank
They
you.
have helped me with a variety of dishes I can cook. Keep up this amazing work. Thank you.
Great. Glad to have helped.
Yeah. Hardy Hat, $5.
He's back again.
He's back. What are your thoughts on the HBO series John Adams if you haven't seen it? And then one more donation, $10 from Stephen Hunt. Been a subscriber for a while. Thanks for all the great work
you,
and
Stephen.
production value. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, the Adams series, I don't think I saw it in completion, but what I saw of it, I loved. I thought the visuals were wonderful, and you know, I think it's really hard always to get into people's heads and try to portray them in the 18th century. I think we can read a lot into the 21st century back into the 18th century, and you know, kind of put motivations in people's heads when you see movies like that. That may not necessarily be there, but I enjoyed what I saw of it. I thought it was really good.
I just saw a question real quick. I don't know if Kyle saw it, but I just saw it. And it might be kind of cool to talk to some of the newer people.
Yeah.
They asked if we've ever gotten... Where did that go?
Hollywood
Oh.
call from. Yeah, I was
for
just about to
costumes.
read that one.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead, read it.
Yeah.
That's what
It
it
says, speaking of movies, has Hollywood called for any costumes?
So we've sold things to Hollywood, operas, television productions for 25 years, generally in a very small way. Glory, The Patriot, Last of the Mohicans, the
Amistad.
Amistad, Pirates of the Caribbean, Interview with a Vampire. Yeah.
Hawaii Five-0.
Hawaii Five-0. Why? I have no idea.
Yep, the new
show?
one. Yeah,
What?
the new one.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't understand why.
Yeah. And then lots of other little movies that have, come and gone, and I've forgotten their names already. Lots of interesting television shows, Outlander, and all kinds of crazy places call us up and order. Generally, again, small things. And a lot of times it's set dressing. So, I need some stuff on the shelf in this particular shot or whatever. So, what was the other one? National Treasures. Yeah, that was. If you remember the National Treasure movie where there's all these, like the frozen pirate ship that's under the ice or something like that, like all those bodies had on our clothes. Isn't that nice?
Transformers.
Transformers.
The glasses and Transformers.
Glasses and Transformers. So but all kinds
Yes,
of.
Turn. Somebody just asked about
Turn.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
One of my favorite days at work that didn't have to do with YouTube was I was downstairs and Dan was like, Aaron, we just got an order in for the new Quentin Tarantino movie. And I was like, oh, no way. And he was like, yeah, it's called, what did he say it was called? Cool Fu Manchu. And that ended up being Django Unchained.
Yeah.
Oh,
But
really?
that was like the working title
Uh-huh.
for what the movie was. That's so awesome. So go ahead, Kyle.
Yeah.
We did send out a bunch of stuff not too long ago for the new Hugh Jackman movie that came out, Greatest Showman.
Oh, okay.
It was a 3-boxer.
So you never know here if you're in the office on the telephone, if you're packing boxes, just what kind of movie place is going to call you up or, ask for something to be shipped out to you. And sometimes we will end up having things in movies that we didn't realize it because somebody will purchase things from us and then sell it to the movie. So
One of the big ones I just remembered was The Revenant.
yeah,
I remember seeing that in
Revenant.
theaters and pointing out oh, that's ours, that's ours, that's ours.
Right.
That was pretty crazy.
yeah.
That's what kind of makes it fun to watch these movies.
Yeah, it's spot the product. So that's always a lot of fun. And I think there is, if you go into the back catalog and you search for movies or whatever, there's an actual one where I rattle off all the movies. But we probably did that just now. So there you go.
Let's see here. Would middle-class people normally make all their own clothing, or would they buy most of it ready-made?
I think the vast majority are going to do the making of most of the clothing themselves. Did you say middle class? Or?
Yeah, middle class.
Yeah, I don't know if there was very many middle class, really, as we think of them. But even in De Orville's book, he talks about the majority of people, at least in the setting he was talking about, the farm that he went to, they made all their own flax, they made their own linen, they had sheep, they made their own wool. So they produced a lot of their own cloth and clothing. There was still a lot of the cloth imported, so you might buy just the cloth and make it into your outfit, and not necessarily have, so you could do it both ways. It's like, or all three ways. It's like, yes, you might make your own fabric, you might buy your own fabric and make something, and then you might just buy the completed garment. So all those things were a possibility.
How did people feel about Freemasonry in those times?
You'll definitely see both sides of that. There are references in all kinds of books about this person or that person was a Freemason. Sometimes they kind of keep that, suppressed. There are other people that are speaking out against that for, religious reasons or whatever. So yeah, it's something that pops up quite frequently. And I don't know how to read that one way or the other. It definitely is there. I think, no, I don't know. I think George Washington, I don't know. I have no idea. I don't even want to go there because I don't know that for sure. So.
Let's do the Instagram. Talk about the Instagram contest
one
more time.
So Instagram, we do have an Instagram contest we do every Friday on the live stream. If you hashtag Townsend's, and you've got a picture that's historical related, merch related, unboxing, anything like that, and you want to throw it into the pot for the contest, make sure to hashtag us. You can also at Townsend's _official is helpful for us to be able to find some of those things. We have so much fun seeing these things that come through. It's great to see what people are interested in, what kind of pictures they're taking. So that's always a lot of fun.
Here's the winner this week.
There's the winner.
I thought that was a really cool picture.
There you go, the winner this week. And we will connect with them. I'll DM them, or Ryan will. He's out on the road, so I'll probably try to DM them and get them their gift certificate. So yeah, that's a lot of fun, and I want to thank the folks that have been in sort of engaging with that. So I also have here a quick list of some of the latest Patreon supporters. I wanted to thank them really quick. There's Yankee Frugal, Dakota Wayne Arney, Kendall Jennings, Crimson Possum. Yeah, Crimson Possum. That sounds like a good one. Again, let's see, Gannon Thrall, Sean Schuerman. There's a bunch of folks, so I really want to thank the folks that support us via Patreon. It's one of those great ways that you can just support us a little bit each month, but it adds up in the end. It's really helpful for us to be able to continue to make the kind of videos we do. I mean, somebody was talking about production quality and all that. We really try hard to make engaging videos that are also visually compelling, and the content. It can be hard to do with all the kinds of things that we're trying to do, but it's so much fun, and I want to thank those folks that support us with Patreon.
Okay, we're going to do a couple more questions, John.
Okay, a couple more questions.
How were stoneware ale bottles made?
Boy, I wish I had the bottle here. It's out in the kitchen. Ale bottles, the bottles in the 18th century generally were glass bottles. And if you were making a pottery bottle in the 18th century, and especially if you're making it with something like an alcoholic content that wants to be under pressure or becomes under pressure, pottery can have a real problem. Unless it's something that's so finely bodied like porcelain, which is almost like glass anyway, you'll have some porosity there. And it wasn't until the late 18th century, early 19th century that they finally sort of captured the ability to make the body and the glaze fine enough that the pressure of a carbonated beverage didn't force the liquid out of the bottle over time. And in fact, we have one of the early ceramic bottles that we made, and it was made with a sort of a molasses beer, and over time it forced the molasses out through the body of it, and it kind of dribbled down the outside of the bottle all over it because it was forcing the liquids out. So you have to have a glaze that is perfect and smooth and doesn't have any kind of porosity to it, and a body that is a very vitreous stoneware. So it's got to be almost like glass or it won't work.
How often did people take travelers into their home? Were people expected to be more hospitable and trusting in the 18th century?
Yeah, the Charles Wood Mason book is a good example of that. He talks about traveling in the backwoods of South Carolina, and people would just come and knock on your door because they had nowhere else to go. They're traveling from one place to another, and it's nighttime, and your choice was, do I see a light, 3 miles up? I'm going to go there and I'm going to stay the night there. And that was not uncommon at all. I don't think it was uncommon in other parts of the country either. People just had to be more hospitable because it was probably a reciprocal thing, right? So it's like if I expect to go anywhere and at times I might need to stay the night, then I better let that same thing happen to me. And so it may not be they may not put you up in the nicest room. You may have to sleep out in the barn, but that kind of thing happened much more common in the 18th century.
And last question, how do I donate?
Okay, so how do you donate? There are so many ways you can help us do what we do on this channel. There is a super chat that is available on the channel. Probably not the best way, but it is a great way to get your comment to pop up. There is a PayPal link in the description section. There's also a Patreon link for people to support us through Patreon. And you can also head over to our website, and there's the merch tab down at the bottom. So if you want to purchase a t-shirt or a really cool mug or something like that, all those are great ways to help support what we do. And boy, we want to do so much more this year, and it's going to take a lot for us to be able to do that. But I so want to thank everyone for the amazing ways you guys support us. And some people, if the only way you can support us is by giving us a thumbs up or commenting on a video, that is a great way to do it. Another great way to help support us is by sharing our videos. That's how people find us, is by you sharing the videos, through social media and so many other ways. Some people just email, hey, I'm going to email this link out to somebody. In fact, I had a great comment, a new viewer, and he was talking about sharing our channel with other people. So I really want to thank everyone who shares our videos. That's another great way to help support us. How we doing, guys?
Do one more donation, then we can call it good. $2 from Star Guy 9. Did people get colds? Any recommended foods to help?
Wow, great question, and I wish I had some great answers off the top of my head. Some of the cookbooks have a great quantity of sort of medicinal things going on in the back of them. Some of them are very, very scary, and I would never do them. They probably kill you right away. But a lot of times they have simple suggestions, and they have even suggestions of specific foods for people that are feeling poorly. Like broth, soups, etc. So that would be the first thing I would go to, is simple broths or paps, which are sort of like a bread soup. It's like bread and broth, kind of boiled together into something very easy to eat, easy to digest. And they had that quite often in the cookbooks. So are we there, guys?
I think so.
We are there. Wow. A lot of fun and a lot of great questions, and hopefully a lot of great chat. I don't get to see it. I'm on this
it's great.
side,
It's a great stream.
So
Tons of questions.
Yep.
Right. So thank you guys for your really great questions and engaging in the live stream. It is so much fun, and it's totally different from the other kind of videos we do. It's it takes us a little bit to change gears and to make a video this way, but it is so much different, and I really enjoy the kind of interaction. It's a lot of fun. So thank you guys so much, and all the great encouragement that we get through the comments and through emails and through letters in the mail and every other way. We get so much encouragement for what we do, and I'm so glad that we're able to help people out the way we do with this channel. I mean, it wasn't exactly, when we started doing this, we didn't know what it was going to turn into. And it's kind of done what it's done because of what you guys do on your side of the computer. You encourage us by donating and supporting us and encouraging comments. So thank you guys so much for all you do, and thanks for watching.
Thanks, everyone.